In marketing, we can be really marketing centric. We can think about our skills and then where we can apply them. But what if you could actually find that perfect job that aligned your passion for an industry with your technology, actually be industry centric in your approach to marketing? Hello and welcome to the CMO Show. My name is Mark Jones. Thank you so much for joining us. The CMO Show is a podcast brought to you by Impact Institute in partnership with our friends at Adobe. We are by marketers for marketers and bring you amazing stories about how marketers are building growth and value. And I'm really excited about our guest today. Her name is Hazel McGuire. She's the CMO at Intrepid Travel. This is an Aussie travel company, very fast becoming a $1 billion unicorn, as it were, in the travel space. I spoke to her about how she does her job. She's the first CMO. This is an organization that has grown to the extent that they need a CMO. Brand storytelling is a big part of this story, moving from demand-based marketing, performance marketing, into a broader remit, which includes a real heavy focus on brand storytelling and investing in brand. So there's been a big shift in her approach and really thinking through the role of experience. How do you reflect the experience of being in a type of group travel and the experiences they sell, bringing that into your storytelling and your marketing strategy? Some really great lessons here about how to do all of that. And of course, this perfect Venn diagram, I think, in my mind anyway. You've got marketing skills, a real passion for an industry, in this case, travel, with that broader investment in personal growth, in creating opportunities, professional development. It all kind of comes together, it seems, in this case. So a really great story. Let's dive in. Hazel McGuire, how does it feel to be the very first CMO at Intrepid Travel?
It is, yeah, it's truly my dream role. I'm fairly new into Intrepid Travel. We have a lot of people who have been here for many, many years. I'm sort of 3.5 years in. I joined just coming out of COVID. So joined in London as the UK and European sales and marketing general manager. So I was leading our sales and marketing efforts in that region. And then had the opportunity in April this year to step into the very first inaugural CMO position within the structure, following on from Lee Barnes, who was our Chief Customer Officer prior to that. So yeah, no, honestly, it's an absolute dream role. I've got a fantastic portfolio of things that I'm responsible for. I had a lot of plates to spin, but yeah, really enjoying it.
Now, questions on behalf of the listener. What is Intrepid Travel and why does it need a CMO?
So Intrepid is the world's largest small group adventure travel company. So we operate tours for sort of small groups, around 12 people or so, around the world. So globally, a portfolio of over 900 itineraries. And we are on a trajectory to become the world's first $1 billion adventure travel company. That's our stated aim. And yeah, we needed somebody to step into the CMO position, really to ensure that we've got a really fantastic sort of plan and strategy behind how we utilize our brand and how we make the most of our experiences and how we sort of bring that together to create a really nice storytelling journey for our customers.
I got to say, it's a fantastic line to say that we're going to be a unicorn in the travel space. My dad-ish punish thing says, you've got to have some sort of unicorn tour now, but that doesn't exist, obviously, does it?
Yeah.
But how can thank you. How can you say that? On what basis?
On becoming the first $1 billion adventure company. So as far as we're aware, there's no other small group adventure company hitting those revenue targets. And we are coming out of year on year since COVID, we have had record-breaking years. We have really changed our strategy coming out of COVID to really look at how we position ourselves as a brand as well as a travel business. So we have really changed our marketing approach, our approach to telling our story to customers. And I think that's really paid off. As I say, we've come out of year on year, biggest ever years that we've had, year on year ever since COVID. We're on track to deliver another one going into 26. You heard it here first. But yeah, we think it's been a real. We think the market is moving towards us. We think that coming out of COVID, people really felt the need to experience things more and really felt that lack of social connection. You weren't able to sort of immerse yourself in cultures because you weren't able to leave your your home or your hometown. And I think since then we've really been able to tap into that sort of ability to make the most of social connection, make the most of cultural immersion. And that's been a huge part of our brand storytelling since COVID. And I think it's really resonated with customers.
Mm. One of the reasons I was looking forward to speaking with you is that I've read some reports by economists lately, and they've been talking about the rebound and the continued growth in travel, particularly here in Australia, where, of course, we're on airplanes all the time. We love the country, but kind of can't seem to get enough of getting away from it. And I know that you guys are also really thinking deeply about customer experience, because quite clearly you live it, right? This is you create it. You're part of that story. So yeah, give us that sort of big picture perspective that you've got.
I think there's two things at play. Some is the sort of macro environment, and as you say, the economy globally really has had quite a lot of fluctuation in the last few years, and in Australia, exactly the same thing. And there has been a resilience in the travel market. I think one thing we do find, and we see right across the world, in fact, is that even when the economy is tough, customers tend to want to ring fence that money for some travel. As you say, coming out of Australia, it's almost a rite of passage, that ability to travel, if, of course, you have the financial means to do so. But I think, across other markets and Australia, we find that where people have to make decisions about where that disposable income goes to, oftentimes they're willing to, for example, forgo a visit out to a restaurant once a month in order to put money aside to still travel. And I think from the perspective of Intrepid, I think what we've wanted to do is really highlight the value that you get from an Intrepid trip. And really that is more than just a holiday. It's actually to do with, as I say, that social connection, that ability to connect both with fellow travelers, but also with the communities and the people that you're visiting in the countries that you're visiting. So you get that sort of, that second layer of value, I guess, to getting away and to having that time in the sun, or that time in really any climate around the world, depending on when you're traveling, of course. But I think it's those two things combined that mean that we have been able to really take advantage of that resiliency. Also, as a global business, we do have, we mitigate our risk somewhat by sort of spreading our portfolio. We've got sales regions around the world. And so therefore, where we see one having a little bit of a tougher time, we rely on and we rely on other markets to sort of bring that back up. And Australia, to be honest, for us has been an absolutely phenomenal growth story for the last 2 years. I think slightly slower to come out of the sort of COVID slump. We know that capacity in airlines took some time to get back up to pre-COVID levels. I think it was only start of this year even that we actually sort of tipped over that pre-COVID capacity number. So I definitely think in Australia, we've seen that sort of slightly slower start out the blocks coming from COVID. But then since then, we really have seen the Australian public sort of not only warming to our style of travel, but also just really seeing the value in that travel experience overall.
Just briefly with the big macro thing, there's a lot of talk here about cost of living, how tough things are for people. And yet here we are talking about all this luxurious group traveling. What's going on? Why is there a disconnect between those two narratives?
Look, I don't think there's a disconnect. I think Intrepid Travel offers travel at lots of different price points as well. So we don't, we have a premium range, which is your higher sort of 4.5 star or so. But we go right down to basics where we strip out, some of the inclusions and we really sort of go back to basics. We're using public transport. We've got, the accommodation is a slightly, it's a 2-star, 3-star property. And we've got a lot of travelers who just love our kind of original style, which is our core and really operates the vast majority of our customers, which is around that 3.5 stars. So because you have meal inclusions, because you have your tour leader, you have your on-the-ground transport, the value that you can offer. And I think value is the important thing for customers in cost of living. So yes, there is an element of perhaps, as I said, forgoing one or two kind of luxuries in a month in order to put the money aside to make that trip happen. But I think people do tend, certainly reports that we see would tend to suggest that customers would rather forgo those little luxuries in order to have that holiday. And then I think the fact that we do offer such a range of different products and styles around the world means that you can choose a shorter haul product, means you can choose a higher end product, a lower end, and you can kind of make that work for your budget as well.
My 22-year-old daughter's just come back from a Kentucky tour, which, from my point of view, wow, that brand's still going. Like, I thought that was like, and I'm not just being unkind to your competitor for the sake of it. I just, it was one of those, interesting rediscoveries from my point of view. Are they a competitor? What's the competitive set here? Is this that whole experiential thing? Are we seeing a sort of a resurgence of the idea of that?
Yeah, I think experiential travel is definitely on the up. I think people want that sort of broader meaning in a holiday, and I think they're really leaning into having sort of authentic experiences while they travel. I think for us, the competitor set is not so much a specific group of companies so much as there's just so much choice for customers. You can try, you can have that fly and flop, you can have that that sort of uh, rented home accommodation in a city to go away for. You can do cruising, you can do coach touring, you can do independent travel. So I think for us it's much more about leading with value, leading with purpose, leading with why Intrepid, rather than necessarily trying to sit and sort of compare ourselves to what else, because to be honest, we could compare ourselves to limitless opportunities to holiday in different ways. And I think that for us has meant that we have led with where we believe we should be going versus necessarily getting down to a granular level of comparing ourselves to X or Y other company.
I want to talk about the marketing story, of course, which is, our whole core business. But understanding that backdrop, I think, is really important. You've been known for making a shift from more, direct sales and lead gen through to brand. There's a campaign called Only Intrepid I'm keen to hear about. Can you tell us about the switch there in terms of strategy and campaign? What's been the insight driving that?
Yeah, 100%. So the insight driving that is a lot of marketing theory, which does talk to the value or the longevity of brands that invest in brand versus just performance short-term marketing. So there's a lot of field of study with Les Binet and a few others that sort of talk to that. And I think, that sort of piqued our interest from the perspective of how it could be done slightly differently. And I think going into COVID, we spent around 80% of our marketing budget on performance marketing, so very much Google and social advertising. And I think going through COVID, look, it was an existential threat to us. We're a travel company and we couldn't travel. So we had some time to think. So, instead of, I guess, just sitting back and, sort of hoping to get out the other side, we thought, well, what can we use this time for whilst we're not actually able to necessarily be sending customers around the world? And one of the big things we did was we moved to what we term 1B1B, which is one brand, one business. Before COVID, we had a multitude of different customer brands. So we had a different brand for 18 to 35s. We had a different brand for our kind of premium customers. So our older, slightly higher net worth customers. And so during COVID, we very much brought it back under the Intrepid name and the Intrepid brand, which was a risk in its own right. But what that meant is that coming out of COVID, we could make a really strong argument for saying there is long-term value in us investing in Intrepid as a brand, not just as an experience, as a product. So sort of moving it away from that kind of more commodity to why would you want to travel with this company? We want to create Intrepid travelers. We don't want to create touring customers. So I think it was that sort of thinking where we went, okay, we've got an opportunity here. And because we had brought everything under that one Intrepid brand, it meant that we could put our investment behind one brand versus trying to sort of spread that out. So that was quite pivotal. And then really thinking about what was going to differentiate ourselves in the market. Holidays can be a little bit commoditized when you go and do a Google search. It's very difficult for customers to perhaps pick apart what is different and why something is worth the money that you think it is and why another is a different price point. So I think for us, putting value behind the brand was the first step in that journey. And it's one that we started sort of 3.5 years ago, and we continue to be on today. So at this point in time, we spend around 50% of our marketing spend on brand, and we spend 50% on traditional performance media, really sort of mid-bottom of the funnel in terms of more conversion driving. And that's had massive impact for us. So we have seen our brand awareness rise. We've started tracking that, pre-COVID again, we wouldn't have tracked it in the same way, but really we realized that if we were going to invest in this way, we needed to have a metric to track. You can't, you can't measure what you don't track. So we started tracking brand awareness, and we started looking at, we've started working with dynamic econometrics within our media channel split. And what that has meant is we are starting to see our data showing what the theoretical data shows, which is that, the higher brand awareness you have, the less reliant you are on that paid media, the more you get that direct customer coming to you, the more that you can sort of amplify your storytelling. So I think, for us, it's been a hugely positive shift, but it has, it's still a journey. We're absolutely still on that journey. And we definitely have, in Australia, this is our highest brand awareness market globally, as you would expect. We're an Australian company, and we're headquartered here. We've been here for 36 years. So we would expect that, but we have ambitions that we want to be, we want to have that similar brand awareness right across the world. So, it's definitely, as I say, paying dividends. We're seeing record results, but it's not the end of the story. This is still a journey.
Let's switch track now and talk about purpose. You're a B Corp, and keen to understand how you balance the idea of purpose and ethical business practices in a category where, firstly, that's pretty standard, but obviously you're, part of an industry that has a global footprint in terms of, carbon emissions and so forth. So I'm keen to hear you sort of speak to that.
Yeah, look, I think for us, the number one thing is that the duality that we have between purpose and profit has been inbuilt in the company since day one. So when Daryl and Manj started the company, we started with the concept of leave nothing but footprints sort of thing. And that idea of that sort of more immersive experience, and sort of not that kind of, going in to just peer at people, going in to have conversations and sort of, broaden that kind of cultural immersion. And I think going from those foundations to where we are today, that sort of through line, whilst it's got more nuance now rather than, leave nothing behind but footprints, we certainly have kept that ethos all the way through. And then when we decided that actually, we were the first adventure travel company to be carbon neutral, back when that was seen as the right thing to do. And I think after that, we then recognized that wasn't enough, and we needed more to guide our journey. And that's when we decided to become a B Corp. And there are hundreds of accreditations out there. If you scan the market, you will see that, there's a proliferation of accreditations and things that you can hang your hat on in terms of where your purpose credentials sit. For us, B Corp was a great option because it had a number of different elements. So it had a number of different pillars beneath it. So it wasn't just environmental. It wasn't just to do with wealth creation in the communities where we're traveling. It's not just about our internal stakeholders. It's about, a whole breadth of pillars. And I think that was super important to us because, again, back to what I said in terms of you can't target what you can't track, so you can't measure what you don't, you need to measure, you need to have those measurements in place. And so B Corp gave us the rigor around having those tracking metrics, and those, we had the idea of B Corp is that, and it's changing slightly now, but the score continues to improve, and it's a journey. And that has just kept us on the track of saying, okay, when we're making a business decision, we have to make it with one eye on what our impact is, and one eye on, of course, delivery of commercial results. We're a commercial organization, and we don't shy away from that. But it has given a sort of structure to the lens that I would say has always been inherent in the business, but it's given us a little bit more rigor, I guess, around making those decisions and ensuring that the decisions are balanced in the right way between those two.
I was going to ask you about the balance, and I think the interesting question that a lot of people who are not familiar with B Corp, and we here at Impact Institute are also a B Corp, so
Mhm.
I understand the value of the metrics and the
Yeah.
journey of which you speak, and also how hard it is to get the certification, just
Yep.
quietly, um, is to what degree can you attribute your growth to being a B Corp?
That's an interesting one because we fundamentally do not believe that the vast majority of our customers are choosing our product because they believe it is more ethical, more sustainable, more any of these sort of words, or purpose driven. To be honest, the vast majority of our customers are choosing our product because they think, wow, that looks great. There's great reviews. It's the right price. It's the right place. It's the right time of year. And, the company looks like it's a good company. And that's at its base level, that's where the decision making is happening. The purpose piece, I think, and a lot of studies have actually shown this, and this is globally, there's a sort of expectation from a customer that companies are doing things in the background. They don't necessarily want to sort of make a decision on that basis. They don't necessarily want to be sort of bothered by it. They certainly don't want to pay any more for it. But there is an expectation that something's happening in the background. And what I think we use B Corp almost as the outside indication that those things in the background are happening. I guess that's sort of the best way for me to describe it.
Yeah, no, I get it.
We genuinely are doing the things in the background. So for us, it is fundamentally part of our business setup. And B Corp is quite honestly, that sort of external facing stamp of this is true. This is, we say what we do on the tin kind of thing, and it's there, so I think almost like, don't worry about it. Because I don't think consumers want to worry about it. They want to go on holiday at the end of the day. We're selling holidays. You've got however many weeks of annual leave and you want to have an absolutely fantastic time. That's what we're in the business of delivering. But it's important to us that we're also doing it in a way that tries to limit its impact, or tries to make a positive impact on the communities that we're visiting, or tries to ensure that the money is actually staying in the communities and the countries in which we're visiting, so that the economic benefit of tourism is not taking away. It's actually it's an addition. It's a positive addition. So yeah, I think it's a way of saying that we are doing things and we are considering our purpose when we're making decisions, albeit we are a commercial organization.
It's very much table stakes, and some people will like it and others won't, which is fine. Now, I have to talk about AI because AI.
Because if you don't talk about AI, what are you talking about at all?
Yeah, that's right. The listener was going to flick to another show if we didn't talk about AI. No, I do ask because it is, in my view, the most transformational technology we've seen in a very, very long time. And if you are not AI-centric in the way that you think about marketing, about business growth and development, you will be left behind, whether you like it or not. So I'm keen for your take on how you can see it changing what you do right now, or how it will change what you do in the future.
So I think the strategy that we're taking, we're people-centric, we're a people business, we're about real, we're about social and human connection. So that doesn't change. But we are also not dinosaurs. We also realize that AI is going to make massive changes to our industry, and we're really keen to be part of that change. So I think when we start to look at the use cases internally, there's a huge win from a marketing tech standpoint. So there's huge wins in terms of being able to properly interrogate what's working and what's not from a creative standpoint, and do that much, much more quickly. There's a huge win from a studio perspective that we can now have one asset that's designed, and then we almost like flow it through a program, and out pops 500 assets that we can use in 500 different placements. And it took 2 hours versus 3 days. So there's these sort of wins, I guess, in the background that will be wins either for allowing our team to kind of free up to thinking time rather than kind of admin time, I guess, and also to make our marketing more efficient. So at the same point, we really where we can, we want every dollar squeezed to give us the best return. And I think some of the programs that we're starting to use, which are AI sort of derived, are allowing us to do this much, much faster and allowing us to be much more cognizant of what works and to make changes more quickly on that as well. I think, I think there's also still a part for that human storytelling. And so I think the way that we will use it is to enable us to show up better and show up in the right place for customers. But I think we will continue to use our brand storytelling. We'll continue to use our positioning and our kind of our PR and our social to kind of really emphasize the benefits of that social connection and cultural immersion. But I also know that, we come into the work world and we spend all of our time kind of hooked into technology, and it's not necessarily face-to-face. It's sometimes using tech, which is fantastic for enabling me to work in London and work with my team in Australia. But that time in person and that social connection, I feel, is going to become so much more vital. And perhaps those moments of connection during times of a holiday or that downtime, I just think that will become even more important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, for the listener who is probably, I suspect there's a couple of people actually who are listening to this because they've always wanted to work in travel, or they do work in travel, and marketing seems like the perfect Venn diagram of your skills and your
Yep.
personal interests and, an industry. Can you offer some advice on what it takes to succeed in this sector, in this space, in your role? What are the best tips that you can offer to your peers to make it in this space that you're in?
Well, I mean, being generally passionate about what you do is fantastic. So, if you're not really into travel, it's probably not the industry for you to work in. But I think what's really served me well in my career, and it's been sort of marketing or marketing adjacent sort of all the way through, kind of quite commercial, is having a real understanding of numbers and being very commercial, as well as being sort of brand led and understanding that storytelling piece as well. I think you have to underpin it with what matters to usually that sort of that board level, that CEO level, which is understanding how you directly impact, profitability and revenue. And I think, travel can look, it is a wonderful industry to work in, and it can look sort of very, we have lovely awards ceremonies and we get to go and travel to far-flung locations and all these amazing things. But at the end of the day, we are also a business. So I think for people coming through the industry, don't be shy and sort of don't get too siloed in marketing. Be curious, reach out and understand different areas of the business, make sure you know your numbers. And I think that sort of stands you in good stead to kind of come through the industry as a positive part of it and have that opportunity to kind of move your career forward as well.
Okay, so know your numbers and have fun.
That's exactly it. Love that. That was much more succinct than I managed. So thanks for that, Mark.
That's fine. Yeah, we'll edit it in post. It'll be fine. No, I'm just kidding. Hazel McGuire, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on the CMO Show. Thank you for telling us the story of Intrepid Group and the way that you've been approaching your career. I am genuinely inspired by this aspirational growth goal, and we will be cheering you on as a Aussie brand with many global tentacles.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
I really appreciated Hazel's reference to brand storytelling, which is one of our favorite things at Impact Institute. And I have actually written a book about brand storytelling some years ago now. It's called Beliefonomics. And I wanted to highlight something that she said, which is that their approach to brand story relies on these moments, telling the story of these little moments that happen when you're on a tour where something incredible happens. I don't know, it might be a sunset or something like that. And really bringing that alive in the stories that you tell in the marketing and so forth. And that's really key because in brand storytelling, I think about it as these stories that engage us from our both our hearts and minds perspective. What that means is that your audience gets really caught up in the story, in the experience, and they're more likely to engage at a deeper level with your brand. Quite clearly, that's paying dividends for Intrepid Travel, so we'll be watching them with great interest. So that's it for this episode of the CMO Show. Thanks as always for joining us. The CMO Show is brought to you by Impact Institute in partnership with Adobe. See you next time. The CMO Show is produced by Impact Institute in partnership with Adobe. Impact Institute is a professional services firm for purpose-led organisations. Our unique blend of impact consulting, brand storytelling and event services help our clients create meaningful change. This episode of the CMO Show was brought to you by your host, Mark Jones, that's me, and producers Kate Zadell and Kirsten Babels. Our audio engineers are Ed Chang and Daniel Marr. And a quick shout out to Adobe Experience Cloud, which gives digital businesses everything they need to design and deliver great customer experiences. Visit business.adobe.com to learn how Adobe can help transform your business.